Okay, these are the notes for 4.1.3. Basically, what we're going to do here is just do some more practice. So we're going to continue factoring what we have been doing, and really this is more of an opportunity for you to have like a live worksheet with an answer key. So if it were me, I would pause the video and try to actually factor these myself. I will go ahead and talk through them though, so if you want to give it a shot, go ahead and pause. All right, so if I take a look at this, I'm probably going to use an area model. So remember, it's just a tool to help you factor. It's not anything that you have to do. It just might be helpful, especially for more visually adept learning students. So here, if I take a look at this, go ahead and move that up so I have a little bit more space. I'm going to go ahead and put the first term in the first box, last term in the last box. Remember, we multiply those two together. So that's going to give me a 9x squared. That's going to tell me what goes in the top of the diamond. So I'll take out the diamond. I'll put the 9x squared on top. Go back to the question, grab the linear term or the thing that's in the middle, so the 6x, that goes in the bottom. And then we want to multiply to get to the top and add to get to the bottom. All right, so I think this is going to be a 3x and a 3x. Those are going to go into the empty boxes, 3x and 3x. And then from here, we're going to factor. So I'm going to take a look at this first column here, look for something that they have in common, and I believe I can take out an x. So I'm going to put an x down here across so directly below the x squared in the 3x tile. All right, I'm going to do the same thing now. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can kind of fit this puzzle together. So if I look there, I know that I have a GCF of x. Also, do a quick double check and make sure that the x that you factored out originally and the x that you just factored out really does give you the area of that first box, which they do. Okay, so let's see if we can just kind of fit our puzzle together. All right, if we have an x on the bottom and I have a 3x area, I think that what I have outside here is going to have to be a 3 to get that to work. So I think we're going to have a +3 here. And then if I have this x that I just circled in red and this 3x, well, I think then what's going to go in the empty circle is going to have to be a 3 as well. So that's going to be a 3. Do a quick check and make sure that the 3 and the 3 do give you the 9. So you want to make sure that all of the boxes are actually correct. All right, and I think we're good. So from here, when we factored this, we're going to take the original question as a sum, which it's already written, and we're going to rewrite it. You'll notice that it is x plus 3 times x plus 3. But if you take a look at those parentheses are identical, so we could actually just kind of shorthand this, x plus 3. And remember, an exponent just tells us the repeated multiplication. Okay, taking a look at B. On B, I see just 2 terms, which means if I want to use the diamonds and the boxes on this, I would probably rewrite it with a 0x in the middle. So almost have like a placeholder. And again, this isn't the only way to do this, but if I wanted to use the rectangle, this is what I would do. Okay, I'll go ahead and set this up and then put everything where it belongs. So we're basically just doing a whole bunch of rinse and repeat, doing the exact same things repeatedly. Okay, so here, top of the diamond, I'm going to multiply those 2 inside the boxes. That's going to give me a negative 36x squared. But if I go back to the question, there is no linear term, so it's going to be a 0x. All right, so I'm looking for something that the values look identical just with opposing signs. So I think that's going to have to give me a 6x and a negative 6x. Remember, those go into the empty boxes. And then from here, I want to go ahead and factor. So if I take a look at that row, I think I can take a 3x out of there. And then once I know that, I should be able to fill in the rest of this. So here, to get that 9x squared, that's going to have to be a 3x. Okay, and then if we want to get the negative 6x, and we have a 3x. I think that's going to be a negative 2 on the bottom. And then I've got the 3x and the 6x, and I think that means I'm going to have a positive 2 out there. And then do a quick check and make sure that your positive 2 and negative 2 do work with the negative 4, okay, which they do. All right, so I think we've got our factorization. It looks like we have a 3x minus 2 and a 3x plus 2. We can't rewrite them as squared because they're not identical to each other. Okay, if I take a look at this next one, you could go ahead and fill in the gap again, which in this case would be putting a 0 constant at the end. So we could do 12x squared minus 6x plus 0. And then we can go ahead and set up the box and the diamond. And understand, this is the process I've decided to take. It doesn't necessarily have to be done this way, as we've talked about in class. This is just one way to do it. Okay, so I'm going to have my 12x squared and then my 0 constant. Okay, that's interesting. All right, so if I do that, let's see if this isn't necessarily the way we don't want to do this. That's going to give me a 0x squared, and I'm trying to get a negative 6x. So when I multiply and then when I add. Okay, so when I multiply, you're going to have a 0x for sure to get this to work. And then I think this is going to have to be a negative 6x to make sure that those work out as well. All right, so we'll put 1 in one of them and the other, negative 6x. Okay, so let's factor. I am going to take a look at the row first because the 0 across the top means I'm not going to have anything up there. So if I take a look here, I think this is going to be a 6x. So we don't really have a lot to play with here. We have our 6x and our 12x squared. So I think that the open circle is going to have to be a 2x to make this work. So we'll put our 2x here. And then if you take a look at the very top, I've got my 2x and my 0x. The only way that's going to work is if the empty circle is just going to be a 0. But because this entire row is just zeros, I don't even think that we need that part of the generic rectangle. So I'm going to ignore it. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cross that out because it's all zeros. I don't need it. All right, and then now we just need to figure out the one on the bottom, which I think is going to end up having to be a negative 1. Okay, so I've got my base, which was 2x minus 1, times my height, which was 6x. And remember, we can reorganize this. So we'd put the 6x first, and then the parentheses would be 2x minus 1. Okay, and then D. I think we need to reorganize this one first. So I'm going to put my 8m squared first, then the negative 10m. So I'm putting it in descending order, then the plus 3. Now I would go ahead and set up the area model. And put everything in where it belongs. So my 8m squared is going to go in the bottom left corner. And then my positive 3 is going to go in the top right corner. All right, we're going to multiply those two together to figure out what goes in the top of the diamond. That's going to give me a positive 24m squared. And then the middle term, negative 10m, I want to multiply to get to the top and add to get to the bottom. Okay, if I want a positive when I multiply, that means the signs are going to have to match. So I'm basically looking for two numbers, both negative, because I need to get the negative 10m on the bottom, so that when they add up together, I'm going to get a 10. So I think that's going to have to be a negative 6 and a negative 4. I'll put those guys into the empty boxes. And then let's factor. Okay, so if I take a look at that row, I can take out a 4m. And then once I find that, I think the base of this is 10m. It really is just this puzzle that kind of starts falling together. And this should be negative 3. Do a quick check, make sure all the boxes work out, which they do. So I have my base, which is 2m minus 1, and my height, which was 4m minus 3. Okay. Have a little bit more questions here. We have this whole idea of factoring completely, which is really the thing that's happening in this section. It's still factoring. You just want to make sure that you do all of it. So the first thing when I factor completely, I typically look for a GCF, greatest common factor. And that is something that I could take out of all of the terms, not just one of them. So I'm going to look at all of the pieces. I'm going to look at the 4x squared, the 10x, and the 6. Well, those are all even numbers. So I think I'm going to take out a 2. So if I grab my GCF of 2, I'm going to put that out in front and then open a set of parentheses. I'm going to divide all of those by 2. So that would give me a 2x squared, a negative 5x, and then a minus 3. Okay, now that we've taken the GCF out, and your GCF can be variables also. In this case, there weren't any variables we could take. So now I'm just going to look inside the parentheses, and I'm going to pretend like whatever's inside the parentheses is my brand new problem that I have to solve. So I'll take out the generic rectangle, put everything in where it goes, and then factor. So it's going to be a 2x squared. That's a negative 3. Set up the diamond. The top, remember, you're going to multiply those two together. It's negative 6x squared. And then the bottom is going to be the negative 5x. Notice that I'm referring back to the blue highlight because I'm kind of done with the 4x squared minus 10x minus 6. All right, I want to multiply to negative 6. The signs have to be different. And I want to add to negative 5. Okay, if the signs are different, you're technically subtracting the two numbers together. So I think if I take a 6x and a 1x and I subtract them somehow, I'll get 5. And I think the 6x is going to have to be negative. So multiplied, yep. Added, yep. All right, let's go ahead and put those in where they belong. Remember, it doesn't matter which one goes where. And then let's start factoring. So if I take a look at this first row, or the bottom row, I think I can take an x out of there, which means then the bottom of the first box is going to be a 2x and then a plus 1. All right, let's see if we can go up. I think this is going to be a negative 3, and then double check and make sure it works. Okay, so now our answer, we just replaced the blue stuff with the factorization we just completed. So we've got a 2x plus 1 and then an x minus 3. All right, you're not quite done though. You need to make sure that you bring the GCF with you. So bring that 2 down with you that you got when you took it out. Now I think we're done. So we've got the GCF and we've got the other 2 factors. Okay, let's take a look at B. B doesn't look like it has a GCF, but it technically does because we can take out a negative 1. I think ideally what we would like is our leading coefficient, so the negative here on the x squared, we'd like that to be just 1. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out a negative 1. And what that'll end up doing is just flipping the signs. And then now it's just like the previous question. So I'm going to take a look inside and I'm going to start creating my generic rectangle. So I've got 2. There we go. Put the pieces in where they belong. So an x squared and a 6. Let's create the diamond. Multiply those 2 for the top. And then go back to the blue. Well, that's a negative 6. All right, let me fix my sign here. So it's a negative 6x squared. And then the bottom should be negative 5x because I went back to the blue stuff. All right, so I know that when I multiply, I think I need a 6x and a 1x. I think that's going to be negative. Yep. A negative 6x, 1x. Put everything in where it belongs. And then let's take out our GCF here. So look at that row. Looks like I can take an x out there. Then I can start finding the pieces that go together. I think that's going to be a negative 6. Okay, so I go back where the blue was, and I'm replacing the blue. And I got a base of x plus 1, a height of x minus 6, and then don't forget to bring that GCF with you. So whatever was out in front.